Good afternoon and salam perpaduan. Thanks for joining us. I'm Mohanapriya and you're watching Updates at Noon. Making the headlines today. Necessary for PBT to provide comfortable facilities for hawkers and petty traders. Automatic gazettement for all temporary flood relief centres. Local authorities, PBT, especially in urban areas, need to provide comfortable infrastructure and facilities for hawkers and petty traders to conduct business in a conducive environment. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim said the facility needed to be provided as the group also contributed to the national economy through their businesses.
Kota harus indah dan bersih. Bukan saja untuk gedung-gedung pencakar langit dan juga untuk bank dan peniaga-peniaga besar, tapi mesti diselitkan dengan menyediakan kemudahan kepada penjaja dan peniaga di mana saja lorong tempat awam yang memungkinkan mereka berniaga dengan selesa dengan kemudahan asas yang cukup.
The Prime Minister said the matter was also among the issues discussed during a meeting with the top management of Kuala Lumpur City Hall, DBKL, in Kuala Lumpur recently. He said through the effort which aimed at improving the people's economic well-being, it could also give participation opportunities to all groups, including hawkers and petty traders. Datuk Seri Anwar, who is also the Minister of Finance, said the country's economy is not only generated by large companies, but also involves the participation of small and medium-sized enterprises. Datuk Seri Anwar has also asked government agencies to stop organising big-scale ceremonies or buying new attire for events to avoid wasting public funds. Datuk Seri Anwar, who is also Finance Minister, said the allocations used for such extravagant events could instead be channeled to needy groups.
Tiap majlis ada perayaan, ada pakaian baru, batik baru dan beberapa persiapan baru. Saya kata kita akan hentikan amalan tersebut. Kalau nak bari, sediakan kepada yang miskin. Sediakan kepada pekerja-pekerja peringkat rendah. B40, pekerja-pekerja bawah dapatlah batik percuma, tak ada masalah. Tapi jangan bagi kepada saya, jangan bagi kepada menteri atau KSU, beri kepada yang di bawah. Kalaupun dah pilih nak beri. Boleh setuju yang tu ya? Ya. Ini ada orang kata perkara kecil. Saya tolak Mercedes, saya kata perkara kecil. Saya tak ambil gaji, perkara kecil. Tapi semua yang kecil-kecil ini, termasuk amalan memberikan hadiah kepada pembesar yang datang, tukar batik atau sampin atau pakaian tiap majlis. Kalau kita tukar ini semua, saudara, yang kecil-kecil itu bergunung lautnya.
The Premier said this when opening the 2022 National Level Hawkers and Petty Traders Day Convention. Sarawak and Selangor today became the latest states to be struck by floods, requiring 5 relief centres or PPS to be opened as of 8 a.m. Perak saw an increase in the number of flood evacuees this morning, but Terengganu and Kelantan recorded a downward trend while the situation remained unchanged in Johor. In Sarawak, the State Disaster Management Committee, JPBN, reported that 3 PPS had been opened in Kuching as of 7 a.m. to accommodate 119 flood victims from 30 families. In Selangor, the JPBN Secretariat informed that 2 PPS had been opened since last night, namely at Sekolah Kebangsaan Merbau Sempat Shala, which housed 20 flood victims, and Dewan MPKS Desa Coalfield, Kuala Selangor with 34 people. In Perak, the number of evacuees rose to 50 from 17 families as of 8 a.m., up from 41 people from 15 families last night. Over in Terengganu, the number of evacuees dropped to 25,895 from 27,396 last night. The JPBN Secretariat in a statement said that 6,844 families were still sheltering at 181 PPS in all 8 districts in the state. Meanwhile, in Kelantan, 24,297 flood victims from 7,623 families were housed at 75 PPS this morning, a drop from the 24,690 evacuees from 7,709 families last night. The JPBN Secretariat said the evacuees were at PPS in 9 districts: Pasir Mas, Tanah Merah, Kuala Krai, Pasir Putih, Kota Baru, Bachok, Tumpat, Jeli and Machang. In Pahang, the JPBN Secretariat said the number of evacuees remained at 23 people from 6 families who were housed at SK Sungai Ulang, Kuantan. In Johor, the number of evacuees at 2 PPS in Segamat remained unchanged at 46. Meanwhile, it is reported to be raining in Johor Bahru, Muar, Mersing, Pontian, Segamat, Kluang and Batu Pahat, while it was sunny in Kota Tinggi, Tangka and Kulai. Deputy Prime Minister Datuk Seri Dr. Ahmad Zahid Hamidi has directed all temporary flood relief centres or PPS throughout the country be gazetted automatically and function as full-fledged PPS. Datuk Seri Ahmad Zahid, who is also the National Disaster Management Agency or NADMA chairman, said the agency has been directed to gazette all PPS where flood victims are sheltered.
Dengan arahan baru ini, kerana penampungan perlu dilakukan dengan segera, kita telah mengeluarkan arahan tetap bahawa PPS yang tidak digazetkan ini akan secara automatik digazetkan dan semua bantuan-bantuan mengikut SOP yang telah ditetapkan hendaklah juga disalurkan.
The Deputy Prime Minister was speaking to reporters after a briefing about the flood situation in Pasir Putih by Pasir Putih District Officer Ahmad Adli Yassin at Sekolah Kebangsaan Jelo, Pasir Putih. Datuk Seri Ahmad Zahid, who is also the Minister of Rural and Regional Development, said NADMA has decided that all gazetted PPS throughout the country will have their own multi-purpose hall to serve as permanent flood relief centres during floods. A total of 103 disaster locations have been reported throughout the country yesterday, with 71 involving floods, 19 slope failures, 3 collapsed roads, 6 sinkholes and 4 damaged or collapsed bridges. The National Disaster Management Agency, NADMA, said 4 locations each were reported in Kedah and Negeri Sembilan, 1 each in Perak and Selangor, 3 in Johor, 5 in Pahang, 27 in Kelantan and 58 in Terengganu. In a statement, it said the incident locations, as reported by the Public Works Department JKR, involved 44 federal roads and 59 state roads. As of last night, the Drainage and Irrigation Department DID reported that 4 rivers in Kelantan were at danger levels, namely Sungai Lebir in Kampung Tualang, Kuala Krai, Sungai Golo in Kampung Jenub, Tanah Merah, Sungai Golo in Kuala Jambu, Tumpat and Sungai Golo in Rantau Panjang, Pasir Mas. 3 rivers in Terengganu have also reached the danger mark. Sungai Dungun at Jambatan Jerangau, Dungun, Sungai Kemaman at Paya Paman Pump House, Kemaman, and Sungai Nerus at Kampung Jeram, Kuala Nerus. NADMA had also said that all Disaster Operation Control Centres, PKOB, in flood-hit states had been asked to determine the immediate needs for affected areas so that information could be shared with non-governmental organisations willing to help. Now, the search for the last victim in the landslide tragedy at the father's organic farm campsite in Batangkali resumed this morning. The search for the boy, which entered its 8th day today, started at about 8 a.m. with the rescue team assisted by 6 dogs from the Tracker Dog Unit or K9 and assets from various agencies including the Royal Malaysia Police, PDRM. The weather at the search location this morning is bright, unlike yesterday when it rained, resulting in the SAR operation being postponed for safety reasons. In the operation yesterday, the rescue team recovered 4 bodies, comprising an adult man and woman, as well as 2 children, at a depth of 7 meters in Sector C, the riverside, at 11:04 a.m., bringing the death toll in the tragedy to 30 people. The police at a press conference late yesterday confirmed the official and actual number of victims involved in the incident was 92 instead of 94 as previously reported. Selangor Police Chief Dato' Arjunaidi Muhammad said the new total number of victims was confirmed after reviewing several documents, data and reports received from various parties, including the families of the victims. Plus, Malaysia Berhad is expecting an increase of its daily traffic to 1.8 million vehicles as compared to 1.6 million per day in 2019. For the upcoming year-end festive celebration of Christmas and New Year, the highway operator said the volume is expected to rise further to 2 million per day starting today until 2nd January 2023. Plus, Chief Operating Officer Dato' Zakaria Ahmad Zabidi said more than 1.8 million vehicles per day were consistently recorded following the start of the school holidays. The upcoming year-end festive celebrations will contribute to extended travelling hours, and this is where the Travel Time Advisory or TTA schedule will help highway customers to plan their journey. The TTA can be obtained from the Plus website or any of its social media platforms. Apart from the TTA, he said Plus is also taking various other measures to cope with the increase in traffic and at the same time provide smoother and more comfortable journey during the festive season. Dato' Zakaria said Plus had issued stop work and no lane closure orders from today until 26 December and between 30th December until 1st of January to avoid unnecessary congestion during the year-end festive celebrations. However, temporary lane closures need to be carried out to make way for immediate accident clearance and cleaning works, as well as emergencies or critical maintenance for safety reasons. Sarawak has recorded 3.87 billion ringgit in tourism receipts from January to November this year, compared to 537.17 million ringgit last year. Sarawak Tourism Board STB Chief Executive Officer Sharzidi Saleh Askor said this strongly indicates that Sarawak tourism will be undergoing a healthy recovery stage next year. According to Sharzidi, the STB surpassed its target of 1.2 million visitors for 2022 and from January to November this year, as more than 1.6 million visitor arrivals were recorded, which is an increase of over 900% compared to the same period last year. Moving forward, she said the Rainforest World Music Festival 2023 will be held from 23rd to 25th June next year and is set to be organized completely physically. Meanwhile, she said STB is also working hard on positioning Sarawak as a world-leading eco-tourism destination while working closely with tourism stakeholders to engage them in responsible practices. Shazidi added that as Sarawak's waterfall attractions are becoming a trending tourism hotspot, and STB is working very closely with its stakeholders into developing a more accessible and family-friendly tourism spot. Up in our foreign segment, FTX Bankman Fried, charged with epic fraud, released on $250 million bond. Lawmakers in Scotland passed a contentious law on Thursday, making it easier and faster for people to change their gender, despite a rare rebellion within the ruling Scottish National Party SNP and concerns from the UK government. The legislation, which garnered 86 votes in favour but 39 against in Scotland's devolved parliament in Edinburgh, drops the requirement for gender dysphoria medical diagnosis in order for someone to alter their gender. People aged 16 and 17 will also now be allowed to change their gender, despite efforts by some Scottish lawmakers to keep the age at 18. The law reduces from 2 years to 3 months or 6 months for 16 to 17-year-olds the time needed for an applicant to live in their new gender before it is officially recognized. An additional 3-month reflection period is also required, during which time those who have initiated or are considering altering their gender can change their mind. Opponents of the law fear it could be a danger to women and girls, particularly around the provision of single-sex spaces. But the Scottish Government insists the legislation will not impact the Equality Act, which allows for trans people to be excluded from single-sex spaces, such as changing rooms and shelters. Brazilian President-elect Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva on Thursday announced a new set of future cabinet members ahead of his 1st January inauguration, including Vice President-elect Geraldo Alckmin as Minister of Development, Industry and Trade. In an event in the capital city of Brasilia, the president-elect unveiled new names that will be part of his coming cabinet, such as the new Minister of Racial Equality or the Human Rights one. There are still 13 ministers to be appointed, Lula said, which will be decided by next Monday or Tuesday. Brazil's Congress late on Wednesday gave its final approval to a constitutional amendment increasing the government spending cap to maintain welfare payouts to poor families next year, a centerpiece campaign pledged by the country's incoming president. The bill, backed by Lula's transition team, is set to raise Brazil's spending ceiling by $28 billion for 1 year to fund monthly payments of $116 under the Bolsa Familia welfare program. It will also allow an extra payment for families with children up to 6 years old. Arizona will remove a line of shipping containers placed along the U.S.-Mexico border a week after the U.S. government filed a lawsuit alleging that the makeshift wall, designed to deter migrants, was illegally erected on federal lands. Arizona will remove the containers and the equipment, materials and vehicles used to install them by early January, according to an agreement between state and federal authorities reached in Arizona and protect its citizens. Environmental activists opposed the improvised wall, 6.7 meters high and topped with concertina wire, as harmful to local wildlife. The work of placing up to 3,000 containers at a cost of about $95 million was about a third complete. Sam Bankman-Fried was released on a $250 million bond package while he awaits trial on fraud charges related to the collapse of the FTX crypto exchange. Federal prosecutors in Manhattan have accused him of stealing billions of dollars in FTX customer funds to plug losses at his hedge fund, Alameda Research. Bankman-Fried was not asked to enter a plea on Thursday. He has previously acknowledged risk management failures at FTX, but said he does not believe he has criminal liability. Nicholas Roos, a prosecutor, told U.S. Magistrate Judge Gabriel Gorenstein that the bail package would require Bankman-Fried to surrender his passport and remain in home confinement at his parents' home in Palo Alto, California. He would also be required to undergo regular mental health treatment and evaluation. Bankman-Fried, 30, was arrested last week in the Bahamas, where he lived and where FTX is based, cementing the one-time billionaire's fall from grace. Bankman-Fried founded FTX in 2019. A boom in the values of Bitcoin and other digital assets propelled the exchange to a valuation of some $32 billion earlier this year, making the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT graduate, a billionaire several times over, as well as an influential donor to U.S. political campaigns. Armenia on Thursday accused Russian peacekeepers of failing to prevent an illegal blockade in Azerbaijan's Armenian-populated Nagorno-Karabakh region, which has sparked 2 wars between the neighbors. Yerevan has accused Baku of creating a humanitarian crisis in the mountainous enclave by blocking the sole land link connecting it to Armenia. Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan said the Russian peacekeeping contingent in Karabakh is not fulfilling its obligation to control the Lachin corridor. Azerbaijani activists have since last week blocked the key road to protest what they claim is illegal mining. Baku claims the protest was spontaneous and civilian transport can move freely in both directions between Armenia and Karabakh. But Yerevan has accused it of staging the demonstrations, and Pashinyan said the crisis in the Lachin corridor has not yet been resolved. As a result of the illegal blockade, Pashinyan said the humanitarian situation in Karabakh is becoming extremely difficult. Armenia's parliament said last week that the region was suffering from shortages of food, medicine and fuel. Coming up in sports, Adelia Noor claims silver in Storm Under-22 International Junior Stars. National track cycling champion Mohammad Shafirdaus Sahrom is now fully focusing on recovering from a left leg injury before competing in the 2024 Paris Olympic Games qualifier, the 2023 International Cycling Union UCI Track Nations Cup. Shafirdaus said he had discussed with the National Track Cycling Squad head coach John Beasley to change his training pattern to a lighter one to avoid aggravating the existing injury. The 25-year-old Moa-born cyclist said the step was taken after taking into account the advice of his physiotherapist regarding the possibility of more serious injuries if he did rigorous training. Shafirdaus said currently there are no immediate tournaments as his tournament is in February for Olympic qualification. Therefore, he said this is the time for him to recover. Shafirdaus said the focus on recovery was important because the 2023 UCI Track Nations Cup races in Indonesia and Egypt in February and March were important races to qualify for the Paris 2024 Olympic Games. He said the muscle injury he suffered was the result of a minor leg injury when he was involved in an accident during the second qualifying race of the Kirin event for the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games in August 2021. National junior bowler Adelia Noor Irwan Shazali created a sensation by winning a silver medal in the women's singles open event at the 22nd Storm Under-22 International Junior Stars Tournament in her maiden appearance yesterday. The 15-year-old kegler from Selangor knocked down 2,224 pins at the Sunway Mega Lanes in the first 10 frames to hog the leaderboard at the semi-final stage, but could not sustain her form in the final. In the final against Manon Ishida of Japan, Adelia could only manage 223 pinfalls, while her Japanese opponent knocked down 229 pins. When commenting on the game, Adelia said she was satisfied, although she missed the gold medal. Her coach, Sabaruddin Mohammad Noor, hoped the splendid performance in Adelia's maiden appearance would augur well for her future, and if she can continue a consistent performance, can break into the national squad soon. Initially, Sabaruddin said his target for Adelia was to make the national squad in 5 years, but based on her current performance, Adelia may be ready in a year or two. Meanwhile, another young kegler from Negeri Sembilan is Nakiuddin Putra, managed to win a bronze medal in the men's open category with 204 pinfalls after a playoff for third-fourth placing. The gold medal was won by South Korea's Park Dong-hyuk with 204 pinfalls, while Singapore's Joshua Su took the silver with 201 pinfalls. Banned Russian athlete and 2012 Olympic 400 meters hurdles champion Natalia Antiuk has been stripped of her gold medal from the London Games after she did not appeal her doping ban, according to the Athletics Integrity Unit AIU on Wednesday. The 41-year-old won the 400 meters hurdles title at the 2012 Olympics, defeating American Lashinda Demus, who will be upgraded to gold once the International Olympic Committee, IOC, acts on the AIU ruling. Antioch's results were disqualified after the Russian anti-doping agency rendered its decision last week. The ruling will become final and binding if there is no appeal after 45 days. The AIU will then inform governing body World Athletics Competition Department so they can disqualify her results, after which the AIU will write to the IOC to confirm her sanction so they can reallocate the medals. Antioch is already serving a 4-year ban until 2025 for breaking anti-doping rules. The ruling was handed down last year by the Court of Arbitration for Sport, CAS. At the time, CAS said all her competitive results from June 2013 through the commencement of the period of her ineligibility in April 2021 were disqualified. Poland coach Czesław Michniewicz will leave at the end of the month, with the country's FA PZPN saying on Thursday that it will not renew Michniewicz's contract after the team's last 16 World Cup exit. The PZPN said Michniewicz, 52, had several meetings with its president Cezary Kolesa and other officials to review Poland's performance at the World Cup in Qatar, where they lost 3-1 to eventual runners-up France in the first knockout round. After a thorough analysis of all the information, the PZPN said it decided not to extend Michniewicz's contract, which expires at the end of the year. Kolesa thanked Michniewicz for 11 months of work as coach, where Michniewicz managed to lead the national team to the first World Cup knockout stage in 36 years. Poland appointed the ex-Legia Warsaw boss after parting ways in January with Portugal's Paulo Sousa, who asked to be relieved of his duties in December 2021 after less than a year in charge. Poland drew 0-0 with Mexico, beat Saudi Arabia 2-0 and lost by the same scoreline to eventual champions Argentina in Group C before falling to France in the last 16. The PZPN said it would begin its search for its successor soon as they prepare for the European Championship qualifiers, which start in March. Poland have been drawn with Albania, the Faroe Islands, Moldova and the Czech Republic in Group E. Football great Pelé will remain in hospital over Christmas. The hospital treating Pelé said that his cancer had advanced and that he requires care for renal and cardiac dysfunctions. The hospital Israelita Albert Einstein said Pelé presents cancer disease progression and requires greater care related to renal and cardiac dysfunctions. The Brazilian has been receiving regular treatment after having a tumor removed from his colon in September 2021 and was admitted to hospital in Sao Paulo for a respiratory infection in late November. Earlier this month, the 3-time World Cup winner said he was feeling strong following his regular treatment in a social media post responding to concerning reports about his health. Brazilian news. And that concludes today's edition of Updates at Noon. In our top story today, necessary for PBT to provide comfortable facilities for hawkers and petty traders. Till then, I'm Mohana Priya. Thank you for watching and thank you for your company.